Okay, I got my tea, both babies are sleeping, so let's have a chat, shall we? Hello everyone, I am here today to talk about my labor and delivery story of my son Luke. And this is a very, very highly requested video because, like myself, I like learning about these things, especially if you've never gone through it. It's kind of interesting to hear other people's perspectives of, you know, their stories and what it felt like and what it was like and all these different things. So I'm here to talk about that with you about this round. If you're interested in hearing about my labor and delivery story of my daughter Julia, go and check out the card in the card section. I don't know where it is. But I go into a ton of detail in that one about my experience with Julia. So now I'm going to talk about Lukey boy. So I ended up delivering on January 11th, and I started having labor pains January 10th. Just minor little kind of tightening, I want to call it, of the belly throughout the day. Not enough like to be any sort of pain in any way, just sort of like it really felt like a tightening from the inside of the muscles, sort of like if you're having like a crunch almost. So I had that throughout the day, and then I started feeling a little bit more of an actual contraction, which feels a lot like people say. It does feel kind of like a menstrual cramp is the best way that I can describe it. Just quite a painful one. So it wasn't enough for me to be sure if it was like a Braxton Hicks or not. But I let my sister know because she wanted to know in advance as much as possible, because she wanted to make sure she could take time off of work and have someone to cover her shifts and all that kind of stuff. So I let her know, and also she's probably the most calm soul within the groups of families, and so I know she would be a good person to kind of talk to about it. So it was about 5:30 at night, and I started to notice that the contractions were becoming a little bit more consistent. They weren't like close together or anything like that. They were, you know, half an hour apart or whatever, but they were going away. So I texted my sister and I'm like, okay, we need to figure this out, because if I go into labor in the next, 20 hours, knowing from my experience with Julia, I spent 22 hours in labor. So I was like, I kind of need someone to watch Julia because I don't really want to bring her to the hospital. I feel like that would be quite emotionally scarring on a 2-year-old. So my sister ended up taking some time off work, and she came out here. She got here around, I want to say, 7:38, and we just chilled in bed, and she was timing all my contractions, the actual contraction itself, as well as the time in between all the contractions, and we were watching comedians on Netflix and just hanging out. It was around 10:30, I want to say, that they started to get a little bit more painful, and I'm like, I'm gonna go tub. So if you didn't watch my video with Julia, I spent like 6 hours just hanging out in a warm bath and watching a series on Netflix and just kind of chilling until I felt ready that I could go to the hospital, because I did not want to be turned away from the hospital. It is way too much driving and way too cold outside for me to go back again. So I wanted to make sure that the contractions were like about 3 minutes apart. They were over 45 seconds in length, and that was kind of like my goal for this whole thing. So I was like, Lauren, you go to bed, get some rest. I'm going to go and tub for a bit, and then, we'll regroup in the morning. I will probably go into the hospital then. So I get into the bathtub for about a grand total of 6 minutes, and I realized that these contractions are going from, 6 minutes apart or whatever to like 3 to maybe 2 minutes apart. And I'm like, maybe I'm not going to be tubbing today. So we left for the hospital around 11:40. We got to the hospital around midnight, and we go into the labor ward. I'm in like breathable pain. Like I could breathe through it, but they were like getting to the point where it was like as painful as I had experienced with Julia. And so I was feeling like I've got to be like 6 centimeters dilated by this point, because that's how far along I was with Julia. We'll get the epidural. It'll be great. And so she checks me and she's like, you're 3 centimeters dilated. I can't admit you into a room until you're like around 4, and I can't give you the epidural because you're not, far enough along for me to feel comfortable doing that. So I was like, super, because I'm in a lot more pain by this point. They're getting a lot closer together. I'm struggling to breathe through them at this point. Like they were pretty painful, and I could not believe I was only 3 centimeters. Like, you've got to be kidding me. And I was feeling nauseous, and she's like, I want you to walk around for a bit, for about an hour, walk around the hospital, like see if we can progress this labor along. And I make it down the hall, and I need to sit on the floor because I can't. I'm dizzy, I'm feeling lightheaded, I'm feeling like that sweaty feeling, you know, when you feel like really sick and you get that like sweatiness and you like need to lie on the floor. I didn't lie on the floor in the hospital, by the way. Let's just clear that up really quick. But I need to sit down. I was like, I can't walk around. I don't feel up to it. And the nurse is like, you look a little paler than like I feel is your normal shade. So we're gonna go and stick you down and you can go in and sit down for a bit. So she goes and she checks me again. She's like, okay, so you're like 5 to 6 centimeters now. And I'm like, okay. And it's like maybe 1 o'clock in the morning at this point. And she's taken my blood for the epidural. I'm in much more pain by this point. You know when you hear in the movies like the women like breathing through it and they're like moaning and they're like, ugh, like trying to get through it? I started doing that and I get it now. So they have to wheel me down the hall to a labor and delivery room. If I had been able to cry, I probably would have, but I was trying to just breathe through as much as I could the contractions. Now, the great thing about contractions is there is a period of rest in between, so you do get a chance to sort of like kind of collect yourself a little bit, and I'll go into more detail on what the pain sort of felt like. Just I want to kind of get through the rest of the story first. So we get into the room and the anesthetist still isn't there, but they're coming, and I'm like, this is the highest level of pain I've ever experienced, and I'm starting to feel like my body almost like convulse, almost like pushing down, and I'm like I never experienced this again. Like I had the epidural last time and it basically numbed me, right? So I hadn't experienced any of this before, and so it was like, okay, let's get this woman in here. So the anesthetist comes in, they like stick me with a needle. I'm like trying to stay as perfectly still as possible because I don't know how far dilated I am at this point. So I'm just like trying to be as still as I possibly can. And so they stick me with the needle. I lie back. It's starting to take like a little bit of the edge off, and I'm not feeling the intensity of the contractions at this point. And then I hear a nurse over in the corner. They're like, get the doctor in here. This woman's going to deliver a baby in the next 5 minutes. I'm like, what? That escalated quickly. And I'm at this point, guys, it was the weirdest experience. Like your body is literally pushing out the baby. I had no control over it. They're like, okay, try and create like a little bit more rhythmic and like the pushing. And I'm like, I have no control over what is happening right now. And he popped out in about 5 minutes. Yeah. So I got to the hospital at midnight, delivered Luke by 2:33 a.m. So that's sort of like the overarching view of my labor story. You can imagine my whole family's surprise when I call them at like 3:30 in the morning and they're like, sorry, what? There is a little boy in this room now. They're like, huh? So now I'm going to back up. So contractions. I'm going to try my best to kind of explain this as I best I possibly can. And it's very hard to do so unless you actually experience it yourself. It is menstrual cramps to like the umpteenth degree. It is sort of like flaring up all along the bottom part of your abdomen, and you have to breathe through it in order to kind of have any sort of relief. It was very painful, but I'm going to tell you guys right now that I'm glad that it happened. And the reason I'm glad it happened is because you build it so much up in your head that it's going to be the most excruciating pain of your life, and you're not going to be able to handle it. And you hear all these stories about women like blacking out from the pain and like all this stuff. The fact that I went through labor basically completely epidural free, except for like the last 5 minutes, and then I was numb after that, so that was great. But basically the entire labor was without epidural, and I did it all myself. It was like, okay, you know, that was a lot. That was a lot of pain, and I'm not going to diminish the fact that it was a lot of pain, but I did it. And like, I'm a big baby when it comes to pain, guys, like a big baby. I can't stand needles. I used to have to go to a doctor's appointment to do my Hep B shots that were usually done at the school with like a numbing patch, and I would still cry my eyes out, like big child when it comes to needles and like any sort of pain. And so I just want to like reassure you guys that are out there that haven't experienced it yet. You know, it is pain, but it's a good kind of pain, because you know that at the end of it you get to see your baby, and it every contraction ends. I think that's the biggest thing. So for those of you that are about to go into labor, I want you to keep repeating that to yourself over and over again. Every contraction has an end. You will go through it, there will be a peak of pain, and then it'll subside. So I just want to reassure you guys out there, I did it. I made it through. I know you can do it too. It's painful, but it's so worth it because, you know, baby. So that's all about contractions. Now, Luke was born, he was 6 pounds 4 ounces, so we needed to stay at the hospital for 36 hours, which is why I kind of went into a complete social media blackout. So we were at the hospital. Luke was fine. He's still doing great. He's just a really small little baby. He's just very, very small. And so they would constantly, they were checking his blood sugar levels every 2 hours for a while, then 4 hours, then 6 hours. And obviously they check all your bleeding, and they check your stitches if you have any, and all that kind of stuff. And they want to make sure that you're latching properly if you're breastfeeding, all that kind of stuff. So we stayed at the hospital for a while, and I was like, I want to go home. I want to go home now. So when the 36 hours was up, then Luke was clear, and we were all great and healthy, and everyone was happy, and headed home from there. So so that was sort of the labor story. Post-birth, I think that was another thing in my experience with Julia. I was like, nobody warned me about post-labor. Like, what? Because your uterus needs to like contract down, and like all of your organs are like, something big just happened and we don't know what to do with this. You do experience sort of that cramping and the menstrual cramping afterwards, not to the same level as like contractions, but like dull menstrual pain. Because everything's sort of shrinking and contracting and all that kind of stuff, and you bleed a lot. There's a lot of blood happening going on. Other than that, I'm just like I'm still kind of sore. Like, I gave birth Monday, and it's Friday today that I'm filming this. So a lot of like my lower back feels a little out, so I'm gonna try and book a massage, because you know what? I deserve it. But other than that, this time around, the post-labor was a lot better. I did not have as many of the same symptoms as I did with the first one, because I didn't have any stitches this time around. So that was a lot easier. Everything's just been a lot easier post for me. And I think because also I have Julia, Luke's been a little bit easier for me to figure out what to try in helping him sleep so that I can sleep. And Chris and I have been like going back and forth and like managing each other's like sleep schedules, so like we're all getting as much sleep as we possibly can. Oh, another question I do get asked a lot is like, what does your belly look like now, like post-labor? So when you first deliver your baby, your stomach kind of looks like you're like 4 or 5 months pregnant still, but it's all like jelly kind of. Like, it's weird. So now I guess I'll just show you my belly, because like, whatever, I don't care what my belly looks like now. You guys can see that. So, you know, it's got a little bit of a roundness to it, which is totally normal. I usually use those belly bands. They help a lot, in particular with just alleviating some of that. I don't know what it is. It's just everything's out of whack in that general area. So I find having that just adds a lot of support to my back, and it just makes me feel a lot better and when I need to like walk around and do things. So I've been using that a lot, which has been helping. And yeah. Pretty much all I have to say about that. So overall, I don't want to scare any of you guys with this story, because while there was pain, like, yeah, obviously there's pain, you're going through labor. It was such a good experience overall. Everyone was happy and healthy. The labor went really, really fast because I didn't have an epidural until like the last, 5 minutes. So it went really quickly, and just seeing his little face for the first time is just like, oh my gosh, all of you that are pregnant and about to go through the labor experience, like, that moment is something you will remember forever. And being able to hold your baby for the first time is the most rewarding experience you'll ever go through in your entire life. And I just want to remind you of that. There will be moments that will be really uncomfortable, and yeah, it'll suck, but at the end of it all, you get this little being that's part of you, and it's unbelievable. And I feel really blessed to have, 2 happy and healthy babies. So yes, that's everything. I hope you guys found this helpful in some way, shape, or form, or at least entertaining. And yeah, let me know if you guys have any other questions. Leave them in the comment section below, and I will try and get up some more videos for you guys. If you have any requests, let me know, and I will see you guys all in my next video. Love you, girls. Mwah!